Hi, welcome to CureSMA's first National Disability Employment Awareness Month webinar. I'm Michelle Pantoja, the Marketing Manager here at CureSMA.
And I'm Sarah McCall, CureSMA's Communications Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited for the opportunity to learn from adults in the SMA community and host a meaningful conversation.
We hope this webinar will be helpful to teens and other adults with SMA, families, and HR professionals who want to learn more about hiring and keeping employees of all abilities.
So to begin, we'll meet each of the panelists and they'll share with us a bit about their background and experience.
We're going to then delve into 4 specific topics. The first one will be job search and digital presence. The second one is navigating the interview process and new jobs. Then is overcoming challenges and learning from experience. Finally, we're going to talk about how to make your own opportunities.
At the end of the discussion, there will be a live Q&A. Please feel free to start sending in your questions. And if we don't get to your question by the end of the webinar, we are planning to continue this conversation on Facebook, so be sure to look out for that early next week and a recording of this webinar as well.
Stay tuned till the end to find out how to connect with the panelists and to learn how to join the conversation.
Thank you to our panelists Candice Welch, Srin Madipalli, Kaitlyn Yang, and Shane Burcaw for taking time out of their busy days to join us today.
First off, we have Kaitlyn Yang. She's the founder and visual supervisor at Alpha Studios. Kaitlyn, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Kaitlyn, do you want to share a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, where did you go to school, and so on?
Sure. I was born in Zhengzhou, China, and I came to the U.S. when I was 9. That was when I was officially diagnosed with SMA type 3. I grew up in St. Louis, and then I moved to Los Angeles for college. I went to USC Film. I studied visual effects, and I've been working in the entertainment field ever since. And in 2013, I branched off and started my own company, Alpha Studios.
Thanks so much, Kaitlyn. Next up is Shane Burcaw. He's the author, public speaker, nonprofit executive, and blogger at Laughing at My Nightmare. Shane, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone at CureSMA for organizing this awesome event, and to all of our listeners for taking the time to listen and learn with us today. I really appreciate that. So I'm Shane, and I grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Philly. I went to school there, including my undergrad, which I did at Moravian College in Bethlehem. I studied journalism, and I have been using that ever since. So I've published 3 books to date. I'm working on my 4th, and I also run a nonprofit called Laughing at My Nightmare Inc. that helps people with muscular dystrophy get the equipment that they need to thrive. I have SMA type 2, and I'm happy to talk about how that has affected my ability to work and how it's helped, and we'll go from there. So thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
All right, next up, Candice Welch. She is an executive assistant to Emmy-nominated actress Issa Rae and a procurement analyst at the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. Candice, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. A little bit about myself. I graduated from Cal State Northridge, which is in adjacent to Los Angeles, with my BA in journalism with an emphasis in public relations and psychology. And then I went on further to pursue my master's in public administration, which I earned in 2016. And I was diagnosed with SMA around 18 months old. And I'm just really excited about helping everyone who's in this webinar, who's going to also view it afterward, on how we can provide more equality in the disabled community when it comes to the workforce and employment. So I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Candice. So finally, we have Srin Madipalli. Srin is an entrepreneur and product manager at Airbnb. Thanks for joining us, Srin.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for everyone for joining and fellow panelists for coming to this event and sharing their experiences.
Srin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you go, where did you go to school, and where you're working now?
Sure. So my name is Srin. I am from London, England, and I moved to the United States in January of this year. I have degrees in genetics and law from King's College London, and then grad school at the University of Oxford. I was originally a corporate lawyer in London. I worked as a lawyer for 5 years, and then I left it to become an entrepreneur. I went back to school again and learned how to code and started working as a freelance developer. And then in 2015, I co-founded a travel company called Accomable, which was effectively a platform for finding accessible accommodation around the world. We grew it into one of the leading companies in the space in Europe, and Airbnb acquired us in November 2017, and I moved out to America to lead Airbnb's global accessibility efforts. And I have SMA type 2.
Thanks so much, Suren. Our first topic is job searching and digital presence. So panelists, what resources did each of you use when finding your previous or current jobs, and was doing research on jobs helpful?
How would you, do you want any of us just to interject or go one by one?
Yeah, whoever wants to go first, feel free to answer the question.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to kick off here. So in terms of my personal resources, so not sort of this job because it came via sort of a different approach, sort of as in an acquisition. But my original role when I was first out of school was interning with like a local civil service office. I found it via a careers fair that my university were holding. I found it much easier to find opportunities at like the in-person events, just because like I feel when you are coming in with a disability, the thing that really kind of sells you is like yourself and your personality and your passion for something, and found it easier to get openings when I met people in person rather than doing sort of anonymous online applications.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Suren. Yeah. Who wants to go next?
This is Caitlin. So I had a similar experience as well, where I used my school's job board and research and resources there. At my university, I know each school has their own separate job board that you're able to log in with your specific major. And then we also had what I thought was really useful, but it was a mock interview session, I think every Tuesday at the general job search center for all the universities. So regardless of your major, you can book a time with a counselor for about an hour and just go through mock interviews with them. And I thought that was really helpful.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, so definitely reach out to your university and counselors for help. Does anybody have anything else to add for the first question?
I definitely do. With me working in both entertainment and government, I was able to secure my current job at the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority by going to governmentjobs.com, and it's like a portal for all government jobs, whether it's state, county, city, or federal, and I use that a lot. And I also would find jobs through the entertainment industry on entertainmentjobs.com. There are several things like that can help. But my main staple is governmentjobs.com, and also indeed.com really helped me.
Yeah. I think just with Srin here, just one other thing that I wanted to add. I kind of, the first opportunities I was applying for when I was sort of coming to the end of university, or when I was looking for intern roles during the summer vacation period, I kind of purposely went for jobs that I felt were easier to get into. A lot of people, like a lot of good friends, would be very candid with me. We'd go out for a drink and I'd say, like, look, what would be your risk hiring me? And a lot of people have said, like, look, I don't quite understand disability. You're the only other disabled person I know. I would be, I may have like a nervousness and a fear of it. So, my calculation was then, all right, how do I de-risk things? How do I start building up a resume of experience to show people that I can deliver and I can do stuff? So I actively tried to seek out roles that I thought that were easier to get into in order to start building out my resume.
I will add to that. I often, in the office or when I'm working an event, I am the only one that has a disability, at least a physical limitation. And I had to utilize a lot of internships where it allowed me to show that I was just as able, if not more able, as an able-bodied individual. And I had to prove myself that I could handle any situation regardless of what they may not be aware of due to my physical limitations.
Exactly, and a lot of times you have to you have to find a parallel route in, or find an alternative way in if needs be.
Just going off of that idea of proving yourself, my path to finding employment was a little bit different. Doing it from the self-employed angle. When I began writing my blog, which was all about my life of living with SMA, I really had no intention of turning that into a career per se, but it ended up being my most valuable resource. And this kind of goes into the other idea of this topic of having a digital presence. My blog and all of the work that I posted online ended up becoming the thing that publishers and other media would look at when deciding if they wanted me to write for them. So having that and maintaining that for years, really without knowing if it would ever pay off, allowed me to establish myself and my writing online in a way that became very useful down the road for more career-oriented things.
This is Caitlyn. I'm going to go off of.
Go ahead, Caitlyn.
I'm going to go off of kind of Candice's experience as well, since we both work in entertainment. There is a bit of, kind of paying your dues and kind of proving yourself, and, at least kind of establish that you can do the nitty gritty. So I know when I first started, I was an office intern. And piggyback what Suren was saying, I was, kind of finding ways to minimize what made people feel uncomfortable and kind of maximizing, my success at entry-level gigs. So I purposely picked a studio that was closer to my school because I did not have my car at the time and I was relying on public transportation. So I wanted to be, as close to the actual job, to the office site as possible in case I have transportation issues. I wouldn't be too far away. And I remember my, one of my first gigs was to, just basically answer the phone for a studio, and also to staff their fridge, 2 or 3 times a week. And, I was, thinking like, oh, well, how can I, prove that I can do more? How can I, finish these tasks faster? And one of the little, hacks, that I thought of on the spot was, hey, they go to Whole Foods, for all their kind of fridge needs. Why don't I just call Whole Foods, explain my situation? And we basically order the same thing every week. So see if they can just, kind of put that ready to go and prepaid, and I can just go and pick it up. And, they will kind of hang all the bags on my wheelchair and I will zoom down back to the office. So a task, that, they might have set 2 hours for me, I was able to complete in 30 minutes and everyone was happy. And that was how I was able to move up from an office assistant to an animator there. So a lot of times people do think of, being in a wheelchair, is a challenge. I try to always see the flip side of it and see how I can use that to my advantage.
Thanks so much for sharing, Caitlyn. The second question is, how did you present yourself, your qualifications online and off? Did you find that having a digital presence was important, and why?
It's Srin here. I think it fundamentally depends on what you want to do. So I know Shane was talking about going into journalism and media, so naturally having an online presence and a blog is really important. I think, the kinds of things that I was going for back so when I was finishing school and going into the world of law, having an online presence was less important. It was, you had to have a good LinkedIn profile and a good resume, but social media was less of an issue. And so I think the key thing is it depends very much on what the industry you're working on, what is expected.
I will chime in on that. This is Candice. I will agree with that. Social media did not play a part as far as me going in the government sector. It did not matter. I will agree that having a solid LinkedIn profile is exceptionally valuable. But as far as, having a presence on, the blogs or, Instagram or Twitter, that wasn't going to be a qualifying factor in my interview or hiring process. And for the entertainment industry, it's definitely a plus, but I don't think that really played a part as much. I think it was just, can you get the job done? So for me, it didn't really affect it as much.
I know when I was freelancing before I started my company, Alpha Studios, having, a social media presence wasn't that big of a deal. I do agree that, find whatever the LinkedIn equivalent to your industry is, so since I work in film, LinkedIn is not as important as, say, just keeping your IMDb credit up to date. And every recruiter that I've met, will usually ask if you have a website with everything in one place, so your email, your references, your reels, your current work that they can see visually, and your resume. So instead of emailing them, all the line items separately, it's really good to have, a solid landing page. And then I noticed when I was starting Alpha Studios, I feel like whenever you're starting an entity or business of some kind, online presence is so important, because to most people, that's what they think of when they think of your company, is what you look like online. So we did spend quite a long time with our website relaunch, which was done last year, to kind of really rebrand our online presence and our branding. And that has helped us, gain more customers than what we had when we had our old website.
And I'll just add on to that. Again, I kind of explained my situation, but it's kind of funny. We always joke about, I wish I had more followers on Instagram, or I wish I had more Twitter followers. And it's kind of silly. It seems silly. But when I was in communication with Macmillan, my first publisher, they literally asked me, how many blog followers do you have? And that was a part of their decision on whether or not they would give me my first book deal. So it can have a bearing, just depending on what kind of work you're in. I think the creative fields lend themselves more to having a brand online that people recognize, and maintaining that brand and producing that content now is one of the major aspects of my work, just keeping up this consistent content and this consistent brand for people to identify with, so that they support my books and my nonprofit work and hire me for speaking engagements. So it plays a huge role in everything that I do.
Thanks so much, panelists. For the next section, we're going to talk about resume building. Resumes are a crucial part of the job hunt. What are your top resume tips and tricks? Candace, do you want to go first?
Yes. Within any industry, a resume is vital. It's your first impression to the actual company or agency that you're applying to. And with me, I went a long time with a very bad resume, and I was just wondering what was going on. Why wasn't I getting the calls back? Why wasn't I getting any type of feedback? And your resume and how it's placed and what's on it really does matter. So I took a lot of time, reviewed a lot of other resumes, both within the industry I was going to and just in general, to see how I could improve on my resume personally. So my personal tips and tricks I'm going to get into a little bit further with some examples, but I definitely think if you are not getting the feedback or not really seeing how your resume showcases your skill set, I think you should maybe set up a time to speak with recruiters, or even temp agencies within your local community have resume building tips and seminars to really help you kind of understand what type of resume you need, how long it should be, what you should emphasize. Those are just some personal tips and tricks that I would suggest, and I'm going to definitely show some examples a little bit further.
Thanks,
Srin
Candice.
here.
Candice, oh, go ahead, Shane.
I just thought it was a really valid point there about getting the feedback. Like, one thing that I really found useful was actively seeking feedback from people that I know are really critical. Like, I know sort of sometimes when you're going for your first role, like you I mean, I was often quite low on confidence and was quite scared sharing my resume with people and like wanting that sort of approval and people to say, oh, it looks great. Whereas actually you need people that can really pick it apart and actually help you make it better. So, you know, be very open to constructive feedback.
Thanks, Suren. For our next section, Candice so graciously provided us with 2 resumes. One of them is an okay resume, and then she shows us her newest resume. Candice, do you want to talk about the okay resume?
Yes. So just off top, it looks nice. It looks very aligned. It looks pretty. Nothing looks wrong with it. But as you continue to go further into the resume, there are things that pop up. Number one, it's entirely too long. No one is going to read, at least in my opinion, no one is going to read more than a page. So I highly suggest you condense it to 1 page. And I used to think all the time, how am I going to condense all of this into 1 page? I have so many great attributes. I've had so many great jobs. No one is going to read past a page. What I highly do suggest is you get your 2 or top 3 best jobs that are within the market that you are looking to get hired in. Another thing about this resume is it's all over the place. I have customer service on here. I'm a tutor. I have being an executive assistant. It doesn't look clean. It doesn't look aligned. So if I was a recruiter or a manager reviewing it for hiring potential, I would think that it looks very scatterbrained, like I don't know what I want to do and I'm still trying things. So I highly suggest, if you are interested in a particular market, look at resumes that are for that market and then condense your experience to highlight the skill sets that you have within that market. And if you only have 1 or 2 jobs that actually are within that market, that is totally okay. Recruiters, managers, jobs are more willing to look at a more condensed but appropriate resume than looking at something that is long, confusing, all over the place. So I definitely agree with taking your top 1 or 2 and really taking apart your descriptions, because also resumes, they get so many resumes, they're not going to look at each and every one and read it line by line. They're going to look for key words. So if you're going for a particular job, whether it's in tech, marketing, writing, whatever it may be in, use those keywords that were in the actual job posting. There's usually a section that says job description or job duties. Look at that, pick that apart, see what they're emphasizing on, and see how your skill sets can match up, and then write your descriptions, use your bullet points to emphasize that. So that would be my suggestion on an okay resume. And now we're going to look at what I currently use, which is what landed me my current job at the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. It's one page, as you can see. I have a summary of experience at the top, which gives them a, what I like to say, flash of what I'm capable of, what I've done. And my professional experience is 2 jobs. Now, obviously, I've worked more than 2 jobs, but like I said, they don't need to see about the in-between jobs that you've had. Focus on the 2 that are going to actually help you show your skill set. And I use a lot of good keywords in my resume so that they can see I'm analyzing, I'm managing. Also, for education, keep it to the top 2. I focus on my bachelor's and my master's. If you have certificates, focus on that, especially if it's within a trade or it goes specifically with the job that you are applying for. And if you have special skills that are applicable to the job you're applying for, those are my suggestions.
Candace, thanks so much for sharing your resume and letting us know all your insight or tips and tricks.
No problem.
So Candace, I definitely lit up when I saw your new resume. For the last few years, I had the opportunity to kind of be on the flip side of things. Like I said before, when I was freelancing, I was, kind of submitting my resumes all the time. And now that I have my own business where I hire other digital artists, I do go through quite a lot of resumes. And it is true. It is so nice whenever someone provides a summary of experience right up top. It's kind of like, a too long don't read section where you're like, oh, let me see what this person's about. Got it. Okay, this is a resume worth reading, right? And I think that's extremely helpful. I remember at my first assistant job, the person I was assisting asked for me to go through his email and picked all the resume that came in and put it all up on the computer. And whenever he had time, he would come over and he would just kind of glance them and then close the ones that he didn't like. And then he, kept a few tabs up and then told me to reach out to those people. And Candice is right, like no one's going to read a whole page. They are really glancing down for the keywords and what's appropriate, and they're seeing their experiences, if their past experience match, the position that they're currently hiring. I do want to say that one, one little caveat that does kind of give away that, you are still, newer in your field is if you do have the education section right up top. I do think it's important to keep the education at the bottom and, lead with your summary of experience and also relevant job experience with clear and concise bullet points. And I know that for me, now that I'm, going through a lot of resumes to see what, what type of people are better suited for different type of projects that we have coming in. The most memorable resumes that I can think of the top of my head after seeing many are the ones that really took, what Candace was saying and all of that, make it concise, don't pad it with fluff, because we can read through that. And also kind of just, in addition to doing all these things, they kind of went above and beyond. And what I mean is I remember reading this one illustrator's resume and she just digitally doodled all over her resume and kind of point arrows and kind of drew little things. And I thought, I was like, wow, not only is this a great resume without the artwork, but with the artwork, it just kind of made that more memorable. And then I remember hiring a copywriter to help with our website. And the one that, I at the end I picked was the one that not only did she have the qualifications and all of that, but she made her resume into this kind of like typed, what's the word I'm looking for? Typewriter kind of feel that, really, stuck in my mind visually as like, oh, let me reach out to this person and see what they're about.
I will add to that, Caitlyn. A lot of people think that resumes are boring and they don't add character. You can add character to your resume where it'll still be professional, but we always have to remember, if you put yourself in the hiring manager's position or the owner of the agency or whoever is looking at those resumes, if you put yourself in their shoes, they are getting hundreds of resumes every single day. And depending on how long that job is open for, it's just a mound of resumes. So definitely find ways to make yourself stand out in a professional way. And I also will agree with Caitlyn. When you put your education at the top, it does show your, I guess it shows your level at that point. Education should, on a professional resume, should go at the bottom. Your professional experience needs to go at the top.
Thanks so much, Candace and Caitlyn. Up next is our second topic.
And I just want to say to anyone who signed on a little bit late that we are recording this webinar and it will be available early next week. So moving on to topic 2, navigating the interview process and new jobs. So panelists, what are some tips based on each of your experiences that help alleviate stress when going out for an interview, starting a new job, or making the decision to be your own boss and do freelance work?
Well, I guess I can jump in. For me, a big tip that I think people tend to forget to do, and it's a very simple one, you need to research the company that you're applying for, because a lot of your stress and your apprehension is because you're not familiar with the company. You aren't aware of their strategies, what they're working on, what their 5-year plan is. If you research the company, you can go into that interview showcasing how your skill set is applicable to the position that they're hiring and what you can bring to that company. Obviously, they're hiring you because they're interviewing you because they see something in you that can complement their company. But you have to go in there and really show them how you can complement their company, their resources, and help them get to the next level. I would also say some people get nervous during interviews. I personally don't get nervous, and I think that's because the more interviews you go on, the more practice you have. I used to go on interviews for jobs that I honestly didn't even think I was gonna get, and I didn't, but I got the experience from the interview, and it helped me kind of have my full armor so that on the next job that I actually really did want, I was prepared for those interview questions. I knew how to handle them. I knew what I could say, what questions I should ask. And those are invaluable because it's not a one-way street in these interviews. They want to see you come into the conversation. I think people forget that it's not an interrogation, it's a conversation. So if you're just allowing it to be a one-way street, you're already showing that hiring manager that you're not really able to interject and provide your opinion or your authority on a subject that you're supposed to know. You're supposed to be the expert in that. So definitely interject and add yourself into that conversation. And I would also say dress professionally, no matter what industry. I think dressing professionally sets you apart. So yeah, those are my tips.
So when you said, Candace, the last tip, another person yesterday asked me the same question, working in entertainment or working in a creative field, how do you dress up professionally? And I completely agree that there are many ways you can do that's very subtle, but that will set you apart. So for example, since I work in visual effects and digital arts, there really isn't a dress code. Most people basically wear graphic, tees and jeans and sneakers every day. But I know, when I used to go out on interviews, I would make sure to dress that, but I will also wear a tailored blazer. And I think, getting maybe one or two items of clothing tailored is very important, especially I feel, if you, do have something like SMA where clothes might sit differently on your body than how you like to, but it can be a very simple fix if you can just find a good seamstress and they can take a look at you and make the clothes fit on your body and make you feel really great. So I think, a tailored blazer on top of, just t-shirt and jeans, is something that I used to do whenever I went in for job interviews. And I feel like another thing that does make people feel anxious or stressed about interviews is because, you are interviewing, you're kind of going into this unknown. You're not really sure what the other person is about, and, instead of kind of coming up with lots of scenarios in your head of how it can go, like Candace said, do your research. I still use this, kind of rule to this day where if I'm meeting a person for an hour, I would do at least 2 hours of research on them. And it could be anything, right? Obviously, looking at their company, finding their LinkedIn to see where they have worked, see if we share any commonalities within our network. I would, even go as far as just putting their name through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and see, oh, like they went to Italy last summer. This is something that maybe I can bring up as part of the small talk. One of the funniest stories I remember was I was interviewing for a student work study position when I was still attending USC. And I really wanted this particular job because the hours just fitted perfectly with what I was looking for at the time. And the pay was great. And also they had their own shuttle bus that would take you directly, to the work. So that really solved, my, my vehicle needs in a way. And I, didn't really know what else could set me apart in an interview because it's for work study. Everyone's resume is pretty much similar at the time. I don't think it makes that big a difference who they picked. Everyone was qualified for the type of job that they're looking for. And at the end of my interview, I just kind of casually mentioned, I was like, oh, hey, like I noticed this little like Justin Timberlake, like little magnet thing at your desk. I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan. And then a couple of days later, they emailed me saying I got the job. And that was literally the deciding factor because everyone was the same, but they liked my personality and they liked that we had something in common. And I was able to work that job for the whole summer.
I would just add that being very thorough with your research about accessibility can be another way to feel less stressful going into an interview. Although I haven't done many interviews in my line of work, I do meet with people very often, and a business meeting, although very different, still has that same level of stress where you're trying to accomplish something with someone that you've never met before. And so I often do a pretty extensive amount of research on the accessibility, figure out, how I'll get inside, whether or not I need someone to come with me to help me out physically, and making the person that I'm meeting with aware of any needs that I might have physically on that day, just so that they are not caught off guard by anything that I might have to ask of them. Or if there's any info that they can provide, like, oh, we have a accessible bathroom on the first floor or something like that. That is good information to have in your pocket, and I think that it can help you feel more relaxed when the interview arrives.
I think the only final point that I can sort of add to that is maybe taking a bit more into the world of being your own boss or a freelancer. Personally, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I think Shane has a really valid point about you treat a business meeting like an interview, and like the importance of like really hustling hard. Like running your own business and getting people to work with you can be really challenging, and you really sort of sometimes have to kind of push a little bit, and that again is part of your research, but also in terms of like just networking. Also, I'm sure Shane's done this a lot, offering to help the other person as well. So when I was sort of working for myself, a lot of times I'd go into business meetings and start off with the like, actually, rather than what I need, how can I help you? Can I introduce you to somebody? Oh, I heard that you're doing this, I should introduce you to this contact who might be able to work with you as well. So like, it's got to be a two-way thing as well when you are kind of networking more as a business owner on sort of the freelance basis.
I will agree with that. A lot of people tend to forget that you need to actually show what you can bring to the table and how you can help others. And networking is a huge, huge asset. Even if you're not technically knowledgeable in every aspect of a particular job, if you know someone that you can bring in to help someone else or connect someone, that is invaluable. And you've already made yourself invaluable, an invaluable team member. It's not always about what you can get, it's about what you can also bring.
And I think the final point I also wanted to add, and actually this came up this morning, so I've just been getting I get a lot of requests on LinkedIn and just cold emails or requests for introductions. Like, there's nothing I find worse than a canned email to lots of different people. So like, if you are looking to reach out to someone, like really do your homework and tailor that email. Busy people, the minute they see a canned email that looks like it's been generically sent to lots of people, will usually just be deleted straight away.
So our next topic is overcoming challenges and learning from experience. Panelists, what misconceptions or societal barriers have you faced? Are there certain experiences that gave you the opportunity to learn about your own boundaries or educate those around you about your perspectives and abilities?
I'll jump in right there. I think we've all pretty much said like the misconceptions is basically people looking at us and thinking we're just not capable of doing anything. Societal barriers. I am pretty sure to network very easily within my office. Outside of the office, I'm huge on that, so I didn't have an issue with that. But I will say every experience, every job I've ever had, whether it was intern or not, was an opportunity for me to learn my own limitations, learn what I needed, learn how to speak up for that. And also, 9 times out of 10, like I said earlier, I am usually the first individual that has a physical limitation that has been hired. So it's an educational process for me to show that particular company what is needed for me to do my job effectively and efficiently. So I think every experience I've dealt with, whether it be a win or a learning experience, I've learned something that can help me in my next position. So I think even if you've lost a job, got fired, learn from it so that you can know how to handle that scenario again, because I guarantee you it's going to come up again. So learn from it.
One of the specific challenges that I faced is because of SMA, I'm a quiet person. And when you're meeting with someone in a business meeting type setting, it's really vital that they are able to effectively understand you. so that you can get across what Candice was saying, you know, proving to them that you are capable of doing whatever it is that might be on hand for that meeting. And so something that I've learned is to find all of the most quiet venues in my area, whether it's restaurants or other places to meet, and kind of suggesting that we have our meeting in one of those places, because a quiet environment is it provides me with so much energy and ability, whereas if I'm meeting someone in a loud, noisy restaurant where I have to yell and I get tired 5 minutes into the conversation, I'm not going to be effective in that kind of situation. So I know there's a very specific piece of advice, but I do feel like many people in the SMA community deal with issues related to speech and volume. So finding locations that are quiet and lend themselves nicely to having a quiet conversation is a big way to overcome that one challenge.
When I was in college, that was one of the tips that I received as well, you know, is to project whenever I can. This is, you know, my kind of speaking voice. I don't necessarily sound like this when I'm talking to my friends or anything. I tend to be, you know, a quieter person. But whenever I know that I'm talking to an audience, I automatically think, use my, you know, like superhero voice, right? Like, what can I do to kind of make everyone hear me, even, you know, even though the people who are not next to me in particular. I know one of the challenges that I've been facing just working in entertainment and working in Hollywood is, you know, even though the kind of diversity and inclusion topics, you know, are, you know, a hot, you know, topic right now, which is awesome. They are, you know, there's a long way for it to go. And I know that usually whenever I'm supervising on a film set, you know, a lot of people will come up to me and say, hey, you know, you're the first person in a wheelchair that I have met. Right. And I try to kind of, you know, do it as an icebreaker saying, hey, me too. You know, I never met anyone on set either. And I think one of our strengths, you know, as, you know, people in wheelchairs or having disabilities of any kind really is just from our day to day, we're so used to having backups, right? Like, hey, if this doesn't work, then let's try this and let's try this. And I think especially for film, that's so prevalent. You know, it's like, hey, we have, you know, this shot that we're about to film. Ideally, we're going to film it this way. But if XYZ is not working out, if we're short on time, you know, then we can do it the backup way, which is still good. And that's, you know, can kind of give us comfort in knowing that whichever, you know, whichever kind of pocket, you know, that this particular scenario falls in, we have a solution for that. And I try to use that to my advantage as well, kind of showing directors and producers like, hey, I'm thinking along the same way as you are. So I know, I think a couple of years ago, we were filming at a house. And, you know, as I do with all my meetings that I go to, you know, I look up the place on Google Maps. You know, maybe if it's an establishment, I would search them on Yelp to see if they're wheelchair accessible, just to plan anything ahead that I can. And I noticed that, you know, this particular house we're going to had a ramp, you know, so I just put, you know, my little portable ramp in my car. And when I got there, you know, everyone was like, oh, hey, we didn't know about this, because, you know, I do try to, you know, kind of find ways that I can to not bring up my disability as kind of a leading point. You know, I do want them to kind of get to know me first, but I also, you know, I am aware that there are times where it's better for me to disclose it, you know, for accessibility reasons and whatnot. But on most film sets, I feel that I've been to enough of them that I know what kind of accommodations I need. So on that particular day, I just showed up with my portable ramp and everyone's like, oh, cool, that worked easily. And I think that was, you know, one of my kind of icebreakers to get everyone's like, oh, hey, there is a problem, but, you know, this is my kind of, you know, scenario A, B, and C, and we're going to get through it, you know. And I think that, you know, kind of made it a great introduction for me to the rest of the crew, that we were able to kind of work together more comfortably for the duration of the shoot.
I will agree with Kaitlyn, because I, working as an executive assistant for a top celebrity, I usually get the people that come up and I'll say, oh, hi, I'm such and such's assistant. Oh my gosh, you're in a wheelchair. And it's like, Yes, I am. But as you can see, I'm able to do my job effectively, and I really try to not let that be the starter to the conversation, because I'm more than my chair. But I also do know that working in a non-traditional environment such as the entertainment industry, a lot of places that we need to go to are not always wheelchair accessible. So that is at a time where I have to bring it up, just as Kaitlyn mentioned. And I think it's just how you as a person handle it. If you make your disability an issue, then it becomes an issue for everyone else around you. If you actually lessen the plight of it and just show them that you're just a regular person that just needs a couple things to modify to get through, then it becomes less of a issue for other people to digest. So yeah, I definitely agree with her.
I'd be curious to hear sort of what the fellow panelists think on this, but the one thing I wanted to sort of also throw out there is in terms of when you are in a role, kind of what types of work within that role do you sort of optimize for? So, you know, we talked a lot about sort of learning your boundaries, and I was very sort of embraceful and self-aware from an early age that like there are things that just take me a lot longer than others. So churning out emails or documentation or anything physical will just always take me a lot longer than it would for somebody who hasn't got a disability. So a lot of times in my early roles, I would try to angle for opportunities where they would maybe involve more about presenting, more about communicating, or project managing others, and sort of being able to do more likely to do tasks where your disability becomes less of an issue and where it doesn't hold you back in any way, and you can actually just show off what you can really do.
All right, thank you, panelists. So we will be moving on to our last topic, but first, I wanted to say we are getting close to time, but audience, if you have any questions that you'd like to send in, please feel free. And if we don't get to your questions, we are going to continue the conversation with the panelists on Facebook. So our final topic is how to make your own opportunities. Panelists, what are some tips and advice for staying true to yourself and creating opportunities that take you to the next level of your career? And how do you motivate yourself when maybe things aren't moving as quickly as you want?
You gotta hustle. You gotta know sort of where you want to go, and then, all right, make a bit of a plan, like of the things that you want to do next. So when I've wanted to change roles or move into other areas or move up in a company, I've just been very proactive when it comes to networking, getting to know people, trying to meet as many people as I can, helping as much as I can, and actually sort of generating those opportunities for yourself.
I would just add that if you are listening and you're interested in going into some kind of creative field, I would urge you to remember that creating your own job and working from home sounds super appealing, but it's not easier than a corporate job, like a typical 9 to 5. As Srin said, you have to hustle all the time. And that's especially true when you're your boss, because you don't have anyone looking over your shoulder telling you to create that piece of content or to email that person or set up that meeting. It's all on you. People often ask me how I went or how I was able to get the book deals that I've gotten. They want to know what the secrets are to being published. And the only answer is to work at it for a really long time and build an audience, hone your skills. There's no overnight tip that's going to get you from get you a book deal in the blink of an eye. You have to work at it, and it takes a long time and a lot of hard work.
I will jump in and say that I agree with Shane. You have to hustle, and I personally think just working in both sectors, I've always hustled. I don't know what it looks like to not hustle. I hustle in the government entities that I work in, because you can get very stagnant when you work in an office and there's stability. You can get stagnant. But I want a better life for myself, and I also want to continue to challenge myself. So I'm always looking for new ways to learn. If there's something that I'm not familiar with and it's in a different department, I'll take it upon myself to take my lunch breaks and my breaks and meet someone in that department and say, hey, you know, I'd love to shadow you, or how can I help, because I'm really interested in this. I'm always looking for ways to broaden my education within a particular field that I'm interested in. And I think, like, just, you have to actually want it. It's not easy. And I feel like sometimes being disabled, there's a lot of excuses that you can use as to why you don't reach out for that awesome goal that you've been wanting. And I like to say, don't let the excuse run your life. If you want something, you're going to have to put in the same amount of work, if not more, to get it. But it's definitely worth it.
I know when I started my own company, you know, it was definitely a lot harder because all of a sudden you're wearing many hats, right? You're kind of your own boss in a way, which sounds awesome, like Shane was saying, but now you're your accountant, you're your own PR person, you're a producer, you know, you're kind of your own assistant in a way, kind of, you know, slipping through emails and, you know, making network opportunities wherever you can, because that's how you're, you know, you're really going to grow your network. And it is, you know, what I like to kind of imagine, like, you know, it is a marathon. Like, you're going to have to keep yourself going and figure out ways, you know, whenever you are at a slump, you know, where whatever things are not going as fast as you would like it to, how you can motivate yourself, because, you know, it can be, you know, a lonely position, you know, being, you know, kind of making your own opportunities and being your own boss. I know for this year, a lot of people, you know, really, you know, they reached out to me after I made the Forbes 30 under 30 list for Hollywood, and everyone's like, oh, congratulations, like, how did they pick you? You know, how did you get on the list? And truth to be told, this is a 11-year process that's been in the works, and like most things in Hollywood, it does look like it happened overnight. But, you know, and I was surprised when I made the list as well, but looking back at it, it kind of made sense, because at this, you know, for this particular list, they have 4 judges all working in the entertainment industry. And over the course of my 11 years working in the entertainment industry, I've worked on every one of their projects. And I think the planet just kind of aligned when I was submitting, you know, the appropriate documents. I just happened to list all their projects. And of course, the judges are going to pick someone who they worked with. So, you know, nothing happens overnight. And it's a lot, you know, it is about kind of keeping yourself motivated and just, you know, see where opportunity is and see what steps you can set up yourself, you know, to make them the opportunities that will project you to the next thing you want to do.
And I think that we all said some variation of you have to hustle all the time. But a caveat to that is that you also need to learn how to say no. When you're starting out, whether it's in the corporate world or you're creating your own business, you're so eager to capitalize on every single opportunity that when anyone reaches out with an idea or a project or something that involves you, you're so eager to agree and not really even consider what you have on your plate at that moment, your physical ability to complete the project that they're bringing to you. Early on in my speaking career, I took every single speaking engagement that my cousin Sarah and I were offered, and we were speaking 2, 3, 4 times a week, and it really burned us out. And it had an effect on our future speaking engagements. We had an engagement or 2 where we didn't perform to our best, and we had to be more selective going forward about what opportunities we would take and only go forward with the ones that were most effective and most beneficial for us. So learning how to say no is also an important thing to learn while you're hustling all the time.
I will agree with Shane. I'm 33, and my body and my mental state of mind is more valuable than any check, any tidbit that I can put on my resume. If I know I can't do it, for whatever reason that might be, I'm just going to have to take that and say, well, it's not for me. And not everything is going to be for you. Not everything is going to be the opportunity that you have to jump on. You have to listen to your spirit and listen to your body. Because at the end of the day, we only have one body. So if we're going to work it, make sure we're working it smart and not harder.
Panelists, thank you so much for all your great insights and stories. We're running out of time, so we only have time for one question. This question is for all the panelists.
So panelists, if you could say one thing to human resource employees, what would that be?
Be open-minded.
Don't judge us right off the bat.
I would say talk to as many people with disabilities as you can to inform your decisions and your way of thinking about disability.
I'm going to say a little bit more boldly, we exist. We're not going anywhere. We're educated, so you might want to start listening.
Thank you so much to all the attendees and the panelists. Make sure to connect with the panelists online, and to learn more about the panelists, visit www.curesma.org. We're gonna also ask you guys if you have any career stories to share, tips and tricks, please send them over to stories@curesma.org. Also, we're gonna continue the conversation on Facebook. So this broadcast will be published on our Facebook page, Cure SMA, and on our YouTube page. So there on Facebook, we continue the conversation. Any questions that weren't answered, our panelists are going to answer them later this week or next week, and we're going to publish the post on our website, www.curesma.org. Also on our website is a couple other stories from other adults with SMA who are currently working, and they're sharing their tips and tricks. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, panelists, for joining us, and thank you, attendees.
Thank you.